table. This table copied after the one in Baba House belonging to the late Mr. Lee Kip Lee. And the sleeves, these are the simpler version of Samkai. The left belonging to Cheng Mun Ting Temple. Just notice a very simple curvy leg with a matching topeng on top. Topeng means it's a side table or a side smaller altar table. And the one on the right with matching benches. Move on now to the Indonesia part. Yeah, Indonesian cousins. They too have their own specific Tok Samkai. The one on the left, which is a bit more intricate, wood cupped and finished with gold leaf. Whereas the one on the right, the bottom part is actually placed on top of the table. Yeah, the higher table. I've taken this picture in the Boon Tek Bill Temple in Tangerang. We'll take a look at the properly set up table towards the end of the sharing session. This is a Penang version, a red table resting on red stools. Now, what I mentioned to you are the typical version of Samkai, but sometimes in Malacca we can also find, we call it the square version, which comprises of two identical 21 inches breadth table. Yeah, they join together and then raised on stools. This is one good example taken from Indonesia, Rembang. I'll show you one example later taken in Malacca. So, when do we actually raise Samkai? There are four incidences here that I've listed out. Basically, after the presentation of and when the witness delivery has been accomplished, then there's a sign for the family to raise their Tok Samkai just before the Chotao ceremony. And then for Semayang Tikong, then that will be during the evening on the eve of the Jade Emperor's birthday. And if you were to celebrate grand birthdays, that would be raised in the morning. And of course, also in temples, especially Hokkien temples during religious festivals. Okay. Where do we raise the Samkai, especially at home? Most of these incidences, especially the top ones, are in reference to typical shop houses. So ours will be right in front of the Tiang Besar, just behind the main door. And sometimes, if let's say the occupant were to stay in a Dutch sort of era house, which comprises of one side door and a long vertical window, so the Tok Samkai will be placed inside just the long window. There are also incidences, many incidences where the Tok Samkai is being raised in the inner hall. This is true especially if the houses comprises of at least 3 chimcheng, that is 3 airwells or 3 inner courtyards, and where they place the main deity shrine in the inner hall rather than the front hall. So we call it the Tiang Dalam or the Tiang Datuk. So that Samkai will be raised in the inner hall. Alternatively, if let's say they have a very narrow Tiang Depan, so the Samkai will be raised at the veranda or the porch. Now, in some other incidences, we also raise the Samkai and its full set of offerings at right underneath the first chimcheng or the first courtyard. So basically, the whole altar actually faces the sky. Now, in one particular family, the Tok Samkai actually it has been raised in the Tiang Gelap. That is the second narrowest hall behind the first Tiang Besar. All right. We have also cases where Tok Samkai, especially for Semayang Tikong, being raised in the car drive-in or the car park, or for the matter, if they have a garden, then it will be in the kebun or the garden itself. Now, where did I first learn about all this Semayang Tikong stuff? Now, it began during my early teenage years in the Sekian Temple in Malacca, and at that point of time, we still have many elders around who were very, very much involved in the Baba Nyonya traditional practices. Yeah, even though Sekian has slowly moved on to being a more Buddhistic temple, I mean, practicing more Buddhistic practices, there are still elders who were still very much interested in the traditional practices. So now, therefore, the temple would also have certain amount of artifacts, yeah. And for that matter, Sekian has 2 sets of Tok Samkai, yeah. And we normally, as youngsters, we would normally raise such table during the opening ceremony or camps. We really don't know what these tables were for, but you know, because it's very beautiful and it is high enough for us to place the image of the Buddha up high, so it became a favorite sort of furniture for us to use during the opening ceremonies. Yeah, and this is a picture where we actually offered lights during the opening ceremony. Now, Sekian, because of its Baba Nyonya connection, in the yesteryears, they do practice many forms of traditional practices, and one of them included the Pai Tikong, yeah, and therefore, on an annual basis, there will be they would erect this Tok Samkai on the Pai Tikong on the eve of the Semayang Tikong. So the picture on the left denotes Sekian too is also known as a location, an alternative location where traditional Baba Nyonya weddings can be conducted to. And I was very, very fortunate during my early teenage years to be able to get involved in the setup of the last 3 Baba Nyonya traditional weddings held in the temple. And the altar on the right is actually the Samkai raised during the late Baba Kenny Chan's wedding, which is held in the hall behind the temple's Tok Samkai. We actually managed to source a rather beautiful one from a collector who actually very willingly loaned not only the Tok Samkai but a few other artifacts. So yes, along this journey, I managed to pick up a few things. Also, a chance to interview a lot of our elders, in particular, the late Baba Yokim Sui, who himself was an accomplished Saroni player and also a master in methods regarding to rites and tradition. Also, at this point of time, you notice the Chanap, yeah? The Chanap was produced by one uncle, Encik Nordin, who happened to be caretaker of the temple at that point of time. So we managed to also spend several hours actually seated next to him, and also spending time looking at him, how he produces his tangi. So he was probably one of the last few people who actually produced and sells tangi, let's say easily 40 years ago. Now let's take look quickly at the setup of the typical Tok Samkai. Now this is in reference to a wedding ceremony, yeah? How we would raise and arrange a Tok Samkai. This is the Malacca style. Very, very simple because of the narrowness of the table. So the objects or the artifacts on the tables are very, very specific and very well placed. These information are all transmitted orally, and thankfully, the youngsters nowadays too, they more or less are quite familiar with this sort of arrangement, especially during the Semayang Tikong that they would conduct in their homes. Now, this is the Penang style Samkai raised during a wedding. I must thank Dr. Tong Wei Yan, who actually conferred with Mr. Raymond Kwok from Penang, who provided the information about the arrangement for the Tok Samkai during the Penang wedding. So lots of similarities with our Malacca cousins, with the exception that they have more fruits and probably the addition of the ngor siu, yeah, the tentak there should read as ngor siu. This tentak here should read as ngor siu. And that is the pink colored pagoda and 4 animals. The rest are all the fruits at the back here. Whereas in the Malacca version, we have the oranges and sugar cane on both sides flanking the chanak. Here we have 5 types of fruits, which have been arranged right at the rear part of the table. Now, let's move. And then for the Penang Tok Samkai, it is very important that a pair of fresh sugarcane plant being tied to the table. Yeah. So that itself is a big difference actually between the Malacca version Tok Samkai, which is sugarcane-less, versus the Penang's version. Now, Samkai actually represents the 3 realms. Yeah, heaven, which is the topmost realm, and man, the middle, and earth. So it connects these 3 realms. Yeah, therefore, it is only appropriate that when we pray to heaven, that there is an additional table, yeah, on top of a table, a normal table, which is meant for humans. So that is why the Tok Samkai is not a table that we would use on a daily basis, but only erected during very, very auspicious occasion and dedicated to the Jade Emperor. So these are all the honorific addresses for the Jade Emperor. Now, according, Tikong is actually like the king of gods, and of course, it's like a king with his ministers, yeah. And so he sort of like, you know, reports of good and bad given to him. And here he actually worked through 3 officials, yeah. If you notice, like for example, every time when we pray, we say we pray to Tikong, you know, we place sticks outside our house. We are not actually praying directly to him, but via his representative, that is the officials. We'll take a look at the officials right now, yeah. So the official here, which I was referring to in particular, is this, the Tian Kuan Su Hop, yeah, which is very clearly stated on the plaque on the we call it the Tikong board outside the house. Yeah, there are 3 officials that he worked with. One represents the sky, the other earth, and finally the last one, water. And you notice the birthdays of these officials. They are basically on the full moon days. But the important one here is the Tian Kuan, whose birthday actually fall on the full moon day of the first lunar month. Now, if you take a look at this board here, this is a typical board that you will see in front of, we call it Chinese folk religion practicing families. Here it doesn't say Ting Tong, yeah, but rather Tian Kuan Su Hop. So it's basically, we are actually respecting or sending messages via his officials. In this case, the heavenly official, the heavenly officer, yeah. And in typical Peranakan homes, we actually do not have this board, but rather just an urn sticking out from the wall, and where we would just place our joss sticks, yeah. So a lot of difference between the 2. One is very specific, Tikong Kuan, Ting Kuan, and the other one is Tikong. Now, I need to talk also about the Buddhist aspect of Tikong, yeah, in bracket, which more or less has the same concept as the Taoist one, but the thing is that it Sakra is also known as a protector of the Dharma or the Buddhism. Yeah, so he is based on he's also the king of the 33 gods or the Trayapimsa heaven, which is located on the top of Sumeru mountain. Now, at the bottom of the mountain is where the 4 heavenly deities or the 4 heavenly kings reside. Now, You will understand why I go through this, because that it will. I would like to show you when it comes to the art of what call it, associated with things of beauty. Yeah, I try to relate back to what we have learned or what we know. Yeah, rather than just following things blindly. So Sakra here is basically he's the one, the king of the four quarters, or the king of the four great kings. Yeah. Now, as for Sakra, or the Buddhist version of Tikong, these are the 7 vows made by Sakra that he will always, learn, or he will always be of service to all this, to fulfill all these requests, in order for him to remain as Sakra, or to remain as King of Heaven. Yeah, I will not go through this, because this will be basically sort of virtues that would actually continue to practice even when he is still sitting. Now, why do we pray? Yeah, and especially in reference to Semayang Tikong. Many times, in this case especially for Semayang Tikong, there is this element of gratitude placed straightly behind the Tikong for the survival of the Hokkien people. Yeah. The second point is also a focal point of reunion, where people come together to pray as a unit, as a family, as a community. Thirdly, is also to seek protection and blessing, especially in many cases that I've heard in Malacca. You know, there are many families that actually, like for example, they have never Pai Tikong before, but because of certain incidences that happened, so they said, "Oh, I think I better start praying to Tikong to seek for his protection." And in other cases where they were dealing with or venturing to new businesses, so they said, "Okay, I better pray so that I can get blessing from Tikong, and so that my business can be prosperous." And finally, and most importantly, is that the tradition can be transmitted to the next generation, and by providing hands-on experiences to the younger ones. Yeah, that's how we can actually transmit all these practices and knowledge and symbolism to the next. Now, Semayang Tikong is an annual practice, yeah, but there are times that we cannot Semayang Tikong, okay? So, when can we seek relief? Yeah, a very common one is actually you do not pray to Tikong during mourning period, and this normally lasts for 3 years. Yeah, after the death of an elder in the family, or for that matter, suddenly if a close relative were to pass away during the period, the cleansing period between the ascent of the kitchen god to heaven up to the 8th day of the first Lunaman. So let's say if someone were to pass away during that period and you need to attend because of your close relative or your business associate, something like that, then you need to excuse yourself from praying that year. Now, some people decided to altogether stop praying to conduct this Pai Tikong. So when can you do that? You can do that after a mourning period. Okay, for example, in this case, when an elder passes on, and the family members said that, okay, there'll be problems. Maybe all of us are not staying in the same house anymore. We are all staying out, so there's no one to hit all these things, and therefore we decided that we want to stop the Pai Tikong altogether. Yes, you can do that immediately after the mourning period. So you need not carry on with the practice. And of course, when you converted to another religion, then the practice of Semayang Tikong stops altogether. All right, let's move on to the actual procedure of raising the Tok Samkai. Yeah? First of all, for you to raise the Tok Samkai, the event must be an auspicious one, especially in the house. So therefore, the signs of celebration and sign of joy must be reflected externally, yeah, from the house. In our case here, you must, number one, you must hang the chai key. That is the red cloth that we would hang above and at the sides of the door. The second thing is that we would hang, number one, the tianteng, which is dedicated to the heavens. And of course, if you have the family surname lantern, the Jisiteng, you would hang that together. And during traditional weddings, you may even have an additional pair in between these two, yeah, which whose surname would be of the invited couple. Okay, this is a bit more complicated because we're talking about wedding, yeah. The outer lantern would be the host, and the one inner here would be the one that is going to, we call it tumpang, or to just temporarily use your house for the chotao ceremony. So when you look at, there's 5 lanterns above, hanging above the porch, you know that it's going to be a joint chotao ceremony in the house, with the host or the householders, with the host lantern being placed outwards. All right, so you need to raise the chai key and the lantern first. Then, because Tok Samkai is deemed as something very sacred, so before you place the Tok Samkai, you need to make sure that the area surrounding the prayer place must be thoroughly cleansed. Yeah. And then once you have washed the floor, everything, then you would place the table, put the table in place, and with gold paper wedge in between the table, the leg of the Samkai and the floor. And for symbolically, for symbolism reasons, we would encourage the male issues to actually raise the table, because then we hope that, you know, there will be many men in the family, many more children, male children in the family, that would carry on the family's name and would continue on this practice of Sembahyang Tikung. Then, of course, the beautifying process would take place. And finally, when everything has been placed on the table, we need to asap, or we need to smoke the table. And in our case here, we normally use stangi. Stangi is basically a concoction of agarwood and also sandalwood, added with fresh sugar cane, chopped sugar cane, and also sugar. You let it ferment for a while, and then the effect would be something that you remember by, yeah. So in our case, I would want to have stangi in the house because it would always remind me of either one, Sembahyang Tikung, Chinese New Year, or a wedding ceremony. So that smell adds the ambience, a reminder of a beautiful ceremony that's going to be conducted. On the embers, and the embers will be placed on these roof tiles. We call it genting, yeah. Why? Because roof tile is probably the highest most object in the house, and the tikung, or the Samkai table is something like, you know, something that is dedicated to the sky. It's very holy, yeah. So everything is dedicated to the sky, and therefore it is elevated sky high. So it's a symbolism of offering befitting the gods and Jade Emperor. So personal preparation. A number of people, devotees, would partake the vegetarian diet, and just before the ceremony itself, you need to be clean. Therefore, you need to take your bath and change into proper attire. Where a proper attire is concerned, some people think it's shorts and t-shirts will be fine, yeah. But in most of our homes, and especially along Kiran Street, the degree or the expectation of being dress appropriately because, yeah, I've seen people who are dressed in suits offering prayer to Tikong on that day, on that night, up to people just wearing a normal, a simple shirt, but with pants on, yeah, no shorts, and with shoes on. So basically to say that you are in your Sunday best, to say, you know, something that I would probably associate this with, like, you know, when you want to go to church, you will be in your Sunday best. Likewise, when you want to face Tikong, you want to be in your best dressed attire. And of course, be careful about your action and your speech. And for ladies, if you're menstruating or you just finish your childbirth and within your the pantang period, then you are not supposed to touch any of these objects related to this Semayang Tikong. And those in mourning, you must know that, you know, you yourself must know that you cannot attend such an event because it is considered very, very holy, and you are not clean, in bracket, to attend this event. And as I say earlier on, in order for you to conduct this prayer, you cannot attend any wakes, starting from the ascent of the kitchen god to heaven up to the prayer day itself. And you refrain from prayer for 3 years after any deaths in the house. Now, prayer time, especially for Semayang Tikong, yeah, we are now referring to Semayang Tikong rather than raising the samkai table for a wedding, yeah. And also the lower table for Semayang Tikong. The idea is basically to cross the midnight deadline, and here we have we need to take note of 2 different forms of midnights. Yeah, one is it's also called circular form of midnight, that is 12 o'clock midnight. Yeah, and the other is according to the Chinese timing. Yeah, which actually starts at 11 p.m. The beginning hour of the red hour. Yeah. So normally, quite a number of families along Heeren Street, we would normally like to start about 9 o'clock, and the prayer would then extend up to past 12 midnight, but not later than 1. Of course, there are some people who prefer to start late, for example, 10, and then maybe ending about 2 a.m. in the morning. The most important thing is that you are basically praying to usher in the birthday of Tikong. Yeah, that's the whole idea, to usher in. And once you cross the so-called midnight timeline, so then only you will look into all these little procedures in terms of praying to Tikong. Yeah, the Pasang Lilin, the Songhyo, Tongte, and Paichu. Now, normally, we would offer wine when there is offering of sacrifice. Yeah. So wine would be paired with sacrifice. If not, wine would not be a part of the what we call it. We would normally use wine as a sort of like a form of invitation to Tikong to come and view and partake what has been offered. So in my case, I would conduct a Paichu ceremony where wine is poured into a ewer, and then after that, I would make I would offer the wine to Tikong and then pour the wine on the floor. Yeah, and then refill the cup and then place it back on the samkai. So it is a form of invitation to Tikong to participate or to partake what has been offered. This will be followed by kowtowing and saying your prayers, and then when the time where you're supposed to burn the papers, then we would then remove all the gold, the Tikong kim and all the joss paper to the front, and thereafter, after the completion of burning of the joss paper, the offerings then be either moved back to the main altar, or then we will distribute. So this is part of the kowtowing to the Jade Emperor as a form of highest respect. Now, what can we do with the offerings? So, if you have soaked the offering, then basically you need to cook those offerings the next day. If there's sacrifices like siobak and maybe roasted chicken or whatever it is, then you would try to partake, serve to those present, and then whatever remainder can be packed away or kept aside. And on the Chue Kau, or the 9th day of the Semain Tikong, of the first lunar day, month, that is basically a day dedicated to the sky, and therefore it's a day off for laundry work. You don't hang your clothing on using your bamboo pole or even on your drying lines. Yeah, so basically it's a clear day, laundry off day for everybody. And some family actually practice saving the tikong kim. Yeah, that means they would sort of pinjam or borrow, let's say 3 or 5 pieces of tikong kim, which they would use for blessing, for business, so that they can their business can prosper. It's like a little investment to their business, and then which they need to sort of pay back. They must pay back during the next Semain Tikong. So if let's say you take out 5 pieces of joss paper from the stack that you're going to burn this year, you keep them aside, and then next year you need to pay back this 5 tikong kim. Yeah, so you must pay back whatever you have borrowed. And likewise, if you want to continue next year, then of course you would just withdraw another few more odd numbered pieces from the stack, and then keep for the following year as well. So yeah, this is a normal practice. And as far as my family is concerned, we sometimes burn, like for example, let's say we have folded 1,000 pieces of tikong kim or joss paper, we can keep 50 pieces aside to be burnt on the Chue Kau, or on 9th day. Yeah. Now, Semain Tikong is normally held on the night of the Chue Put. Birthday of the Tikong is actually on the 9th day of the first lunar month. So what we would do is that we would burn the remainder on the actual birthday in the morning. Now, a simple setup for Pai Tikong, according to Hokkien style, is that there will be a little ceremonial table comprising of basic paraphernalia like a pair of red candles, an incense burner or urn, and some flowers in addition to fruits and tea. Yeah, and then there is also the 3 tea and the 5 wine concept. But according to our Malacca style, is that if you don't pray, if you don't offer sacrifice, then you do away with the wine. You only offer 3 cups of tea. And then there is 5 types of fruits and 6 types of vegetarian offerings. And in some cases, we have up to 12 different types of vegetarian offerings. 6, we call it the savory, and 6 of the sweet type. We'll take a look at those pictures afterwards. And most importantly, the sugarcane votive, complete with the teng chi, that is the yellow, what you call it, sort of the long yellow structure with strips that we would bundle up with 3 strips of red paper, and they would be left hanging from the bamboo, from the sugarcane plant. Basically, that would represent money. That's why we call it teng chi, okay, or the long coins, long what you call it, long chain of coins hanging from the sugarcane, which symbolizes prosperity. Now, Sugarcane is actually a very important motif in the act of Sembahyang Tikong as a symbol of gratitude. The homonym, yeah, for the Hokkien word for sugarcane, sorry, the Hokkien word for sugarcane is actually kam chia. So it sounded the same as the word kam sia, thank you. Yeah, so it is a reminder of the descendants, the Hokkien descendants, that you know, their parents or their forefathers were actually saved from persecution in the past. Yeah. Now there are many narratives in terms of what actually happened to the ancestors in the past. One story said there were attacks by pirates along the coastline. The other said there is this the attack by the Qing dynasty forces against the remnants of the Ming dynasty army and people in the Hokkien province. And of course, there's also the attack of Mongols, the Mongols coming from the north during the Song dynasty. Now, I'm not very sure which of this narrative holds true, but I guess the important lesson that we can take from here is that the Hokkien people, they were actually saved. And they probably also escaped persecution at this point of time by whatever enemies they had. And so think that actually all the Hokkiens were to be able to hide themselves in the sugarcane fields. I don't know whether we have sufficient sugarcane plantation to protect all the Hokkiens, because it's very easy to catch them. But I guess it is also very symbolical, because sugarcane was also, rather sugar production was also a very important industry in Hokkien province from the Song dynasty onwards. So sugarcane production, planting and sugar production too may have been a very big industry then in Hokkien. So it's quite possible that to this Thanksgiving prayer, just like how my great grandmother would actually offered fresh coconut plucked freshly from her yard behind the house, and offer this to Tikong during Sembahyang Tikong. So basically the same idea is that you sell, either you sell coconut or you sell sugar cane, and you make a living from this, and you offer this as a votive to Tikong. So whatever happened, the younger generations were very thankful because they were actually given a second lease of life, and therefore we managed to survive up to today. We are still around. So therefore, the gratitude aspect of Sembahyang Tikong is very loud and clear here. Yeah. Now, these are the pictures of tenchi, or the long coin that we attach to the sugar cane. Yeah. So out of this sugar cane plant comes prosperity. So out of probably the great industry planting of sugarcane industry in Hokkien comes prosperity in the form of sugar trading and so forth, yeah, related to sugar industry. So that's the whole idea of why we show gratitude, yeah, because when we need to say thank you for all the good things that comes in your life. Now, in Malacca, we place our sugarcane plant at the main door of the house, and we do not attach these plants to the Tok Sam Kai. In this case, you can see the Tok Sam Kai is right inside the house, yeah. But we place the sugarcane right outside at the main door. Let's take a look at various forms of offering that we would lay on the table. Let's start off with candles. This layout is pretty unique, yeah, because we have not that few typical candles that we will place on the altar. That's basically the main candles on the samkai as well as the lower table, but rather many additional pairs of candles lit along the sides of the lower table. And if you notice, we have also one pair of very long candles, which we call lilin tinggi diri, or a candle that's according to the height of the devotee. And this lilin tinggi diri will be lighted in order to fulfill one's vow. That means basically, if your vow has been fulfilled, then you would light this candle in thanks, yeah, to Jade Emperor. And all these side candles, yeah, denotes that there are many people who actually tumpang, or they just they use a little space on your altar table to lay their offerings. So here we have at least 4 families tumpang, or call it share your table, your lower table offerings, yeah. In this case, so their candles will not be placed right in front where the main candles are being placed, but rather just along the sides only, yeah. So I think there'll be another picture here which will showcase this clearer. Okay, this would be a clear picture of the lilin tinggi diri lighted during Sembahyang Tikung. Now we talk about decorations on the candle. In the past, we used to have this form of almost 3D like floral attachment to the candles, yeah. And this is the modern version, the 2D printed form. Now, along the way, during my ventures into the homes of our elders, I do come across floral arrangement for candles. Now, which I've taken the liberty to sort of expand or to improve on, yeah. Now, here we have one example of a more 3D-like floral arrangement for the candle, yeah. This one, and on this side, yeah. And I also begin to experiment with having all this, we'll call it little figurines, paper figurines, to dress the to adorn this altar. Like in this case, the scholar seated on a qilin. The scholar here symbolizes talent in the family, and qilin basically is a harbinger of good news, good tidings, and also of male issues in the family. So it is a symbol of wish. It's basically a wish for more male issues and people of great talent to be born to a family. And this is the one I was referring to, the 3D floral arrangement, but with the additional attachment of the flying 8 immortals. Okay, I've seen this in one particular elder home, which I've taken a liking, yeah, and therefore made a copy of that sort of arrangement. And here, what I did was basically, you know, normally these dolls, these paper figurines, would actually be just plain statues, yeah. But I've added here, for example, the halo behind the head, and also the flying ribbons. So that adds some form of softness to the figurines here. And then when you attach it onto all these wires here, and so when the wind blows, it will bounce a little bit. So it creates a bit of what you call it, beauty in action on this altar as well. So this year I have instead used the 4 heavenly kings, or the king of the 4 quarters, yeah. And these are the deities that would reside at the base of Sumeru mountain. This is going back to the Buddhistic explanation of Lord Sakra staying on top of the Sumeru mountain, and the bottom part being guarded by these 4 heavenly kings. And these 4 heavenly kings also is pantheon. So basically, I've incorporated. So instead of having 8 immortals, I've placed the 4 heavenly kings instead. So this is another take in another home, how they place the 8 immortals at the base of the big candle that is being placed on wooden candle stands. So instead of having them flying and attached to the main candle, these are all planted into the floral arrangement at the base of these huge candles. Now, other forms of decoration, decorative figurines that I use are basically the 3 stars, the gods of prosperity, emolument, and longevity. And here is the god of longevity riding on a crane. So basically, these are symbols. Like for example, the one on the left are symbols of longevity, and these are the 3 very famous 3 deities that you normally find decorated as form of statuettes in our homes. Okay, so here you can see the additional red candles where people would ompang, yeah, where the and yeah, like for example, each tray, this would belong to one family, yeah. So they tompang, they basically just place their offering using a space in the table of the host. Now, Hokkien symbolism is pretty important, especially for the Penang Peranakans, but not so much here in Malacca, yeah. But I've taken the liberty here to include some of the offerings that appeared very regularly on the Samkai and the lower table of the Penang Peranakans, especially in this case, they need the important offering would include chiku, which normally we Melaccans do not. So chiku here represents plentiful of basically orchards. Basically, you hope you'll be blessed with a lot of land. So Hokkien word symbolism is very important in Penang, yeah, but not so much in Malacca. But nonetheless, many of these stuff too are being utilized on a Malacca Tok Samkai offering. Okay, these are more of visual representation rather than having similar homonyms, yeah, to the Hokkien words, Hokkien names of the offerings. So Malacca, banana, very important. We use pisang raja, so that represents quick reproduction. Particularly the red kuiku with the coin imprints on them. So for us in Malacca, that represents money. Yeah, piti is an old Malay word for tin coins. And in those days, when they produce coins, they are actually attached. They're produced in a very long version, and then when you need to buy certain things, you break the coin apart from the whole strip. So that's where the word piti comes to being, yeah. So in Malacca too, we also offer kuih mee. So we'll take a look at all those symbolism afterwards, offerings afterwards. So very important in Malacca, must have the pisang raja offering and the sugarcane. And sugarcane must be skinned, yeah. And they are all stacked high because these are symbols of reproduction, so that the family may they grow in number And of course, in the past, they say, yeah, may you have lots of cucu, cicit. So these are the hopes, yeah. The faster the rate of reproduction, the more generations you can see within a lifetime. Then we have all the fruits here. Notice the trimmings, very important, yeah. The simpler version would be just a piece of red paper circling the fruits. But here in Malacca, we took the trouble to add a little, this strip of gold lining on the red paper to do addition, to beautify, to add additional beauty to the offering. So the term that we normally use here is cantik atas cantik. That means beauty on top of beauty. This year too, I had the honor of hosting a Penang friend who couldn't go home because of the MCO, or rather the movement restriction order that was imposed during Lunar New Year. So couldn't go back. So, but then he tumpang. He just utilized the little space on the altar table to present his Penang style offering. So this is probably one way where you can offer your offerings in the traditional style using a bakul siang. Now, an important part of the Semayang Tikong would be the, as I mentioned earlier, the 5 fruits and the 6 vegetarian offerings. But I did mention that we can offer up to 12, which comprises of half savory and half sweet form of vegetarian offerings. Now, the 6 savory ones are basically ingredients that you would use in the production of chapchai. So basically, you have here the tauki, the beancurd, the hyoko or the mushroom, the kimcham, which we would tie around the mint stalk, and then the so'un or the tanghun, some of you call this tanghun, and then behind here are the black boji and cabbage. So these are the 6 ingredients that made up chapchai, which after prayer would actually we would actually cook, yeah, and then be served the following day. And the front row here comprises of, we call it the sweet offering. Here I have the longans, the tangpa, and the angcho, which we can boil into a form of tea. And here we have 3 different versions of kengtok, kueh kengtok, yeah. Kueh kengtok in the form of a cat's head, the round version, as well as a ribbon version. And this differs from the Penang style, where they actually, instead of having this so-called sweet version, vegetarian style, they actually offer tikong piang, yeah, 6 types of tikong piang. Now, before I go to the tikong piang, yeah, I would like to talk about this very unique presentation. We call this whole thing the kengtok, yeah. In most cases, the simpler form would be just sort of like arranging all this offering, call it this finial on top, yeah. But in Malacca, it is quite common to see us presenting the vegetarian offering in a very, we call it a raised version, yeah. So we have a little base here, a wooden base, a conical base, and then we would place a skewer in the middle, and then that's where we pierce all the offerings sky high. And then, of course, the finial top will be placed last. Lacquered bowl would look like, this is actually the mangkok kengtok. This is the conical mount here. So you just basically, you don't need to use many of the offerings. A lot in terms of quantity to stack it up, but rather this is sort of man-made platform where you just lay everything on top. And then there's a hole here where you can place your skewer. Now, in addition to the vegetarian stuff, we also do offer what we call it cakes and pastries. Here, on my left here would be the typical kueh bakul and the huat kueh, symbol of prosperity, and also basically a symbol of Lunar New Year too, yeah, because the Semayang Tikong period is within the Chinese New Year season. And here are samples of the kueh kengtok roast up, which are home produced. Yeah, and if there's any white background, we would normally dot the offering red. These are things that I made in my house in the morning. So while the guys are busy arranging the table outside, the ladies will be busy preparing all these offerings. So the red kueh ku, these are symbols of longevity, normally present during birthdays, yeah. And we also place this on the deity's table whenever any birthdays of the deity were to be conducted in the house. Now, this is piti, kueh piti, that with the imprints of coins here on the top, yeah. So, according to one elder, this represents gold, yeah, piti, whereas the rounded form of kueh ku, that represents silver, yeah. So we have gold and silver being offered. And here we have the kueh kemoho, or we call it or some other people would call it the pau, yeah. Again, because it's white, we would paint a red circle on top. Now, if your lunar calendar comprises of 12 months, then we will place 12 of each type, yeah, on the plate. But if there's an intercalary month for the lunar year, then you have 13 pieces of these offerings on the plate. So looking at that, we call it, okay, yeah. Kalau normal year, then you only see 12 pieces offered on the plate. All right, this is the tikong. This is the offering offered in Penang. This is the chai oa, or the vegetarian materials in bowls, the 6 types, yeah, and the sweet ones are in pastry form. These are known as the tikong piang, yeah, and this is only synonymous with the northern style, the northern Peranakan style. Down south here, is something not, we don't normally see this stuff here in Mecca. Now, up north too, they use also the ngosiu, the 5 sweets, yeah, which normally comes in shocking pink color with a central pagoda and the 5 animals. Down here in Malacca, it is not a common feature. We hardly see this as being part of the offerings laid on the table, especially with the Samkai race. Again, another Penang kind of a Penang form of offering, the miku, or the tortoise bun, also does not make an appearance in Malacca. The biko. I was made to understand this is a Penang practice used for the Popun ceremony, which they would place on the altar, and the number of dates and longan here would denote the number of family members in the family. Yeah. In this case, the one who prepared this said that in his family, they only would place 1 longan and 1 date on it, and with bunga delima, or pomegranate flower, instead of having many longan or red dates on it. So again, Yeah, different family, different style, different form of what I call it, symbolisms. Now, in Malacca, it is also very important that we include the misua. Some may come in the form of dry version, but here is, for me, it is very important that I would scald the misua, twist around in this teacup, and then top it with rock sugar. Yeah, and then because it's white, yeah, and then I would place this on the altar. So this is a birthday, a sign of a birthday, yeah, an offering suitable for a birthday. And other offerings would include the Queen E, and this version would all be of equal size. For Tangcik, we normally use the red ones would be slightly smaller than the white ones, yeah. But for Semayang Tikong, both red and white will be of the same size. And then, of course, the teh liao, or the sweets that accompanies the tea, eaten together with the tea. This is the wine ewer and the wine cup. So, as during the Bai Chiu ceremony or offering of wine, so we would pour the wine from this ewer into this cup, and then I would then pour the wine onto the floor to welcome and to invite Tikong to partake the offering. Now, for us, the symbolism attached to the offerings is just not limited to just the meaning behind the offerings, yeah, but also the effort that we take to present the whole regale, in a sense that it would befit someone of a higher or great stature. So we would make additional effort in order to further beautify the offerings. So here I have listed down here some of the female tops that we would add on to all these offerings, yeah. And all these few, yeah, these three are all homemade, yeah. And this one you can buy from the shop, and then you can just twist it and maybe just make some innovative revision or adjustment and turn it into beautiful finials for your fruit offerings and also for your cakes. Now, trimmings, this is something that we would do in much earlier, yeah. Not only when we say baru mau sembahyang, baru mau bikin. Yeah? Normally, when you're free in the middle part of the year, you start preparing all this. So, from a big piece of red paper, you would cut according to the narrow strips, all these narrow strips using this serrated teeth tooth sort of scissors, and then you keep them aside. Now, those days, I would use this, I would cut these tiny strips of gold paper and then paste onto this strip of red paper. But of late, we found an easier method of applying this gold strip onto the red paper. Nowadays, we have this, you know what, those, we call it gold strip that we use to keep our cookie jar airtight. So we managed to find those very fine ones, and then we would actually then stick it onto the red strips of paper. So this is much easier because this is a sticker form, yeah, and we don't have to deal with a lot of this messy glue and content with the glue and everything. So makes job easier and cleaner, yeah, and less messier. Now, moving on to another segment of the offering, the 5 sacrifices. For deities and tikong especially, there's nothing less than 5. Yeah. Normally for ancestors, we will offer up to 3, with additional juhu and noodle, sort of make it up to 5. Yeah, but not 5 real animals or 5 slaughtered animals on the altar. But for tikong and deity, they have got to be really in a form of sacrifices. So, and they represent the three different planes, yeah, of the air, of land, and from the water. So, it is common for us to find a slab of pork, in this case, with duck and chicken, and also with additional fish here, for example, and maybe crab, juhu, or those dried cuttlefish, with some noodles. Okay, so it's basically sort of mix and match, but very important. Normally, you have the basic pork, duck, and chicken. Yeah, and then the additional one, the fish and the prawn and the crab, that will be, pick something that you are very comfortable, that you like to add on to the whole sets. Yeah, so there must be 5 forms of sacrifices for prayer to any deities, for that matter. Now, in those days, my grandmother would actually prepare us for the Semayang Tikong way in advance. Normally, she would buy the Tikong Kim, and then during certain times of the year, like Bulan 8 onwards, to instruct, okay, now all of you, you're supposed to fold your own Tikong Kim, yeah? And so we were all taught to fold certain forms of, certain sort of origami form of the Tikong Kim from young. So what I've tried to do up to today is basically to try to maintain some of these styles that we have, yeah? In the last few years, we have a few versions. That is the sheep form, which comprises of 2 pieces of Tikong Kim, and then we have the sotong, the prawn form, the udang, and then here's the lantern, and this is the typical lotus design or lotus folds of the Tikong Kim. But this is not Tikong Kim. This is the normal standard joss paper, the smaller size. Now, some families, they would normally set aside 100 per person, but according to my grandmother, minimum must be 1,000 per person. So there will be at least 1,000 pieces per year. And let's say if that year she bayar niat, let's say she says, okay, I pray that you will do well in your exam, and then the following year she would add on another 1,000. So basically, the following year we have additional 1,000 papers to fold. So that would depend on the family, yeah. So as low as 100 pieces per person up to 1,000. So sometimes, in my case, I maintain it at 1,000 pieces per year, yeah, irrespective whether there's any new developments also. I already mentioned about this, the loan of joss paper practice. Basically, you store aside or you keep aside a few pieces of joss paper for blessings, yeah, for whatever ventures you want to go into. So this is the udang version. You flip open, so it looks like a prawn. This is kapal, yeah. I call this the kapal or the ship look, which comprises of 2 pieces of Tikong Kim, yeah. And then you need to sometimes either you ketuk, you knock on the table, or you got to blow to make it to expand the whole thing, like it's like a puffer fish sort of thing. So, and then you string them to a long formation, yeah. This is a crown version, kopia. And when you string your joss paper, it will look something like this. They come in long, a whole long bundle, yeah. So why? Because it would facilitate the easy burning of the Tikong Kim at the end of the ceremony. And in some family where they own this sort of keranjang, or we call it the bamboo baskets, they would actually open up or rather inflate these tikong kims, and then they would place them into this basket, and then they would pour out when this Joss paper was about to be burnt. Now let's talk about the most commanding object on the offering table. In this case, the central object is known as the chanak, which we would place at the position on the samkai. In Malacca, basically, it comprises of either 3 or 5 stocks of offerings. Basically, in this case here, in this picture, it's basically made from halwa, or we call it preserved fruits, made from strips of papaya and then cut into crepe-like sort of appendages. Now, another form of offering would be the pineapple and dates, which is much easier to produce. Yeah, but in Penang, it's slightly different. It comprises either of 3 or 6 stalks of sweetmeats, and then which they will skewer upright, and then you need additional flower decoration. Let's take a look at it. Yeah, okay. This is the chanak, the Malacca version, the halwa, or we call it the pickled fruits version, and this is the pineapple and dates version. This is the Penang version. 6 types of sweetmeats here, and there must be this, we call it paper flower appendages attached to the front part of the bitchen box here. So here we call it bitchen, whereas in Malacca, the whole thing is called the chanak. The right version here is something that you see in Phuket, in Thailand. Basically, it is an offering of sweetmeat, something of an offering of beauty, yeah, to tikong. This is actually a picture of the okay. This one is made from the lemon cake, yeah, which is the lime fruit that you would see in the halwa version. That is the papaya version, yeah, of the Malaccas. And this look like skin, either skin of a papaya or watermelon, something like that. I'm not very sure, yeah. But the whole structure here mainly is made from skewered lemon cake, yeah, or those red limes, yeah, small limes. So this is another form of, we call it the chanak, yeah. All right, so we have taken a look at all the offerings being used in the Sembahyang Tikong in Peninsular Malaysia. Now we'll take a look at the samkais being raised in other locations in Southeast Asia. This is a picture taken at the Boon Tet View Temple. Remember the picture which I showed you, where the Tok Samkai has the legs on top. So this is the actual Tok Samkai. Yeah, this is being set up properly with the food, with all the offerings placed on top. This is in Rembang town in Java. Here there are 2 rectangular tables combined into one, which made it to a square table. And look here, there's a local offering here. It's a rice, a conical shaped rice that they offered in stained red. And what interests me most is this particular kentok. Yeah, I'm not so sure what they called it in Indonesia, but similar looking lacquer bowls, the kentok bowls, seen here, and they skewer sweetmeats instead onto these bowls. And noticeably, it is just the top part, yeah, the bottom part somehow or other is left empty. But here, for this bowl, it looks like it's So I'm not so sure whether it is intentional, but it has some form of resemblance like the Malacca version Kinto. So this is a picture taken from Surabaya from the Tan family. Looks very much alike as the Penang version, with a square raised table and with all the offerings laid neatly on the table. Now, if you're wondering that if Pai Tikong is only limited to Taoist, no, it is not, because as I mentioned, Sakra is also the Buddhist version of Tikong, and he is also deemed as the protector of Buddhism. So this altar has been raised during Wesak Day in Borobudur in honor of Tikong. Closer to home, this is what they have. We see an altar table, a Samkai table raised in Penang with the big gem box, or the Penang version of the Chanak, with an osio, with the cakes. This is the Tikong Pia, yeah. And the unique thing about Penang is that if you do not have sugarcane, you can, or for that matter, banana, you can actually replace either one with the pineapple. So the pineapple would be an alternate to either the sugarcane or the banana. This is a bit more traditional. That is an offering complete with all the biscuits, traditional Hokkien biscuits. This one is at the Tok Pei Kong Temple in Penang. And according to Penang style, they have the miswa here, the raw miswa with eggs planted in the miswa. This is a very unique arrangement seen in the Seven Terraces Hotel. The rectangular Samkai, which is not so common. Normally, they are more towards square. Here we have a rectangular table raised with the ngosiu, there's 5 types of sugar formation. And the lower table here with the cakes, as well as the big chain box, and also the sacrifice. Coming back to my hometown, this is the family where many people tumpang, or they make use of a space on the altar table, and therefore the offerings are more lavish and in bigger quantity. Look at this, for example, one tray full of one type of fruits. Yeah, so here we have the Kinto at the back, but here, surprisingly, there is this additional tengcok, or the tikong cok, basically a structure, a paper structure to represent the seat of the tikong being placed at the end of the lower table. In most cases, yeah, if in a Hokkien arrangement, the tikong cok will be placed either behind the joss-urn, yeah, because the joss-urn is supposed to represent the spirit or the soul of the deity. The deity's spirit would reside in joss-urn, and the tikong cok here, this paper structure, would then be placed next to it, or it will be placed right at the edge of the end of the table, in this case. But here it is rather odd because they have the samkai at the back. Yeah. And they tie the sugarcane to the samkai. So there is a mixture here, yeah, a typical Peranakan looking samkai table with a touch of typical Hokkien added into it. This particular family is being involved in production of cake business, so therefore they do offer sacrifices here. Yeah, so Normally, when you see sacrifices on the table, especially in typical Peranakan family, therefore you would always link it with a form of Thanksgiving, prosperous year. Here is a typical vegetarian only sort of offering setup in a residential home. Yeah, a modern residential home, but with very, very typical setup comprising of the samkai and a lower ceremonial table, fruits, cakes, and vegetarian offerings. And here you have one family tumpang offerings on the table. Okay. This particular setup has been placed at the porch of the house, yeah. But here in this case is rather typical because it is placed right underneath the first chimchim or the first inner open courtyard of the house. So basically the altar faces the sky above. And in this family's case, they actually use two rectangular red tables and forming into a square table. Yeah. So basically, it has the look of a Penang style sort of table setup, but with a very typical Malaccan food arrangement. Here we have the tokwi front and back, yeah. So it resembles a typical Malacca samkai. This is a setup in a very young Baba house. He actually sort of encouraged his family to sort of to host a more typical look form of Mayang Tikong. Yeah. In those days, they used to be a very simple, low table sort of layout. This time, there is this samkai complete with all the trappings and decoration as well. So notice here the candle decoration, and there is also an innovative step here where they actually use, instead of real waxy candle, they have actually used metal contraption here, which has an oil, an oil base holder inside this metal contraption. So they will just continue to pour oil so that the fuse will continue to be lighted. It's taken during a traditional wedding ceremony, where the householder would actually add additional decoration to the setup of the home. So here in the inner hall, yeah, or the Tia Dalam, which is also the Tia Dato, where the main family deity altar is being placed. Interior lanterns here. So yeah, it's a beautiful traditional beauty artifact being added to the whole setup. This setup is by Baba Li Yuantian. Notice the decorations here on the candle using figurines here, and then this is also his idea, or his original idea, where he actually uses the metal contraption with the oil container inside. So, basically we are trying to avoid dripping wax. Yeah. So dripping wax can cause harm to your tablecloth, to possibly the tokwies, as well as leaving stains on the floor. So we are trying to look at ways and means how we can still remain traditional, yet being innovative at the same time too. Yeah. So these are additional decorations that he has placed at the candles on this altar. This is another setup with a Tok Samkai here, but unfortunately, because of the size of the front hall, yeah, the tiang depan, it's a bit narrow actually, so they could not have a complete extension of the lower ceremonial table, and instead they have got to go sideways instead. Yeah, so so they lay their additional offerings on the sides. Yeah, so that the whole structure, the whole table and Samkai and the lower table can be fitted into the main front hall. Now we're going to move on to this Semayang Tikong setup in the Yongchuan Temple during the last Wangkang festival, which held in November last year. Yeah. Now this is a very big paper pavilion constructed on a platform above the main door, and down here are the offerings for the Semayang Tikong, which are to be changed on a daily basis. So we have the fruits and the pias here, or the biscuits here, and the other sides would be the vegetarian offerings. But what is more interesting that I would like to share here is actually the effort that we've taken here to present a kind of a typical Peranakan look during the imperial feast during the Wangkang festival. Now, the imperial feast has been hosted by the temple dedicated to Tikong, guiding Ongyas and the 36 heavenly generals to be seated along the sides here. Now, this is a presentation of 108 types of Peranakan cuisines, and using the thought process of how we would lay a table or an offering table. So we try to sort of like we wanted to replicate it in a bigger form here. Now take a look at the fruit offerings. Yeah, because of the sheer size of the offering here, we have got to use big plates. But for the slightly smaller ones like this, we stack them onto bowls, and it is quite typical for us actually to arrange fruits onto bowls, as you can see in terms like behind the Samkai, where we have the oranges and the skin sugar cane, which will stack like a pyramid. So likewise, we took the idea and applied onto all the fruits here where possible. Yeah, for the bigger ones, we have no choice but to leave them rooted on the table. And here are the offerings, the sacrifices. Yeah, the meat, the pork, the chicken, the duck, the crab, and the fish. If you notice, we actually sort of tied the ducks and the chicken into a form, we call it a crouching form, where it looked like as though the ducks and the chickens were actually paying obeisance to Tikong and all the deities. We actually have got to actually twist and break the wings and to shove it through the throat and out from the mouth. Yeah, so it looks something like this. So it looks like as though the ducks and chickens are paying homage, yeah, to the deities. So it is quite a normal homage to our ancestors, where the same style of the way we tie our chickens and ducks, yeah, and where we would actually boil these animals in the hot water in order for us to get this form of crouching animals. Yeah, so it has got to be done when it is still raw, and then only you boil. And for desserts, okay, we place them onto an additional plate. So if you look at, for example, the kuih yi, the teacups, the what we call it, the misua, yeah, or the misali, where possible, we try to have a little saucer underneath. So likewise, for all these desserts, we also place the bowls onto platters. Yeah. So the application of what we have seen and also practiced on the smaller scale is now being extrapolated to a bigger form of altar. All right, I'm going to scroll quickly through some of the Tok Samkais raised in Malacca. Here is one from Cheng Mun Ting Temple. Now, even though we have a typical Tok Samkai, but for Cheng Mun Ting Temple, the ceremonies were all actually run and organized by the nuns. So for this matter, so there is this 5 fruits and 6 vegetarian dishes here. This is the Chaitan Perempuan in Malacca. So where people can subscribe to pay respect and to tikong actually. So they pay certain amount of money, and then this Chaitan would actually prepare baskets of offerings with their names inscribed, and then after the spine you can come and collect your offerings. Yeah. So in the case where you cannot spine as a group offering, so this is how it looks like from the back. Now, this is a very unique presentation at the Giok Siao Kong Temple, which is dedicated to the Jade Emperor. They have a high altar at the back and a lower ceremonial table in front. And in the main or the main, we call it the structure at the back, there is an opening where this glass stand, this mirror stand rather, with the name Yi Huang Ta Ti, or the Giok Hong Ta Ti. So it's being written on it, and there is no effigy of Jade Emperor here. It's just basically a mirror with the name of the title of Tikong being inscribed on it. So and prayer was held here on the Cap Pome Day, that is the full moon day of the first lunar month, which coincides with the birthday of the heavenly officer, yeah. So which also falls on the same day. This temple used to belong to a very prominent family in Malacca, and therefore, what you see in this picture would look like what the family would practice in their home, yeah. And this is very unique in the sense that they have 2 sets of Keng Tok offerings, that is the skewered vegetarian offering. A set of 12 on the top altar and another 12 at the bottom. Here you have part of the ngor siu here, or the sugar what I call it, offering. And down there would be a long table filled with fruits, typical Chinese biscuits, and also sacrifices. So it is only in this temple that they would offer sacrifice, but in their homes it's just purely vegetarian offerings. Yeah. So, but now this temple has been the ownership of this temple has been awarded to the Cheng Mun Ting Temple. So sadly, we can't see any more of this setup being done anymore. And I was pretty fortunate to walk into this little temple at the nick of time before the property was handed over to the Cheng Mun Ting Temple. So this is how the other mirror would look like, Yi Huang Ta Ti. And you can see here part of the simpler version of offering being placed nowadays. Yeah, gone are those lavish offering which comes with the prayer on the Cap Pome Day. All right, I'm going to scroll quickly. This is some kind of setup in the Tan family in Kuala Lumpur. Very typical Malaccan style. This is in another part of Kuala Lumpur. A combination, I must say, of Malacca and Penang style. You have and then yeah, the rest looks pretty much Malaccan here. Yeah. This is a very unique setup by a devotee in Ipoh. Top here you have the chana, and then here you have the vegetarian offering and fruits at the bottom part. Okay, quickly to Phuket. This is a setup of an old Tok Samkai in Phuket, replete of the sugarcane. Apparently, during the early years, it is very difficult to find many things, and the person who sets up this altar is actually one of the pioneers in Phuket, and it is very unfortunate that he could not find a pair of sugarcane to offer together with the offerings on his table. So somehow or other, that look has been maintained up to today in Phuket, as you can see in the setup industry homes. And this is a much more modern take, yeah, of the Pai Tikong on the Samkai. Many of these items obtained or purchased in Phuket, basically because the previous owner, they were not aware of the actual use of such artifacts. Yeah, there were pieces around, but apparently nobody knew what these artifacts were for. So he managed to secure some of this and then having them placed here. But you can see some of the influences that came from Malacca, especially the way how the oranges were arranged. Yeah. So, and you know, with the opening up of the world via internet, yeah. So they have the opportunity to learn many new form of arrangement, not only from the local Phuketans but also from their friends overseas. So this is a pretty interesting setup actually, a combination, and I must say the handiwork are also pretty good. Yeah. This is a setup during wedding ceremony in Phuket. Moving closer down south to you all, closer to you guys. A quick setup, some kind of setup wedding ceremony. It was during the ceremony, the mock wedding ceremony that I participated in, yeah, in the Singapore History Museum when Baba Peter Lee was alive. I think this was easily 25 years ago, yeah, and probably the only and one Tok Samkai being raised up to today in the home of the late Mr. Lee Kip Lee. Yeah, I can't think of any other families in Singapore that still would raise a Tok Samkai for Sembahyang Tikong. So it's a very pretty interesting setup because here Baba Peter Lee actually also sort of included his love for batik onto the altar. So yeah, it's a very befitting and very personalized sort of offering of beauty here for Tikong during Pai Tikong period. And this is my offering, my setup during the Pai Tikong. So I also tried my house. So I have got to utilize a little glass bowl here with a little tea lamp inside, so that the light will not be gushed off, or the lights will not be put off so easily. So, and I try to make it as symbolically as meaningful and as full of symbolism as possible as I can. Yeah. In a way, also besides offering of a sincere offering of we call it fruits and food stuff. It is also a sincere offering of beauty, befitting the highest deity in heaven. So thank you very much, everybody. I would like to say thank you to all involved in making this presentation a possibility, because without their pictures, without their sources of information, I would find it very difficult to present to you today, to share all this information with you today. Thank you very much.
Whoa, thank you, Baba, Cedric Tan. It was such an interesting afternoon. There was a lot of information, and I'm sure all the participants took away quite a bit of knowledge. And before we end for today, there are a few questions that was put forth, and I'll just mention it here. One is that is getting the materials, okay, such as the tok wee, or even the figurines made of paper, difficult in these days now, and where to get them?
Okay, I think number one, don't treat Semayan Tikong as though it is a competition, It is not a competition of who has a better looking altar or presentation, blah, blah, blah. Prayer means it has got to be a sincere form of offering. Simple as it may be, but if it comes from the heart, it's definitely worth much more than someone who's just trying to present it, in a very boastful way. So don't worry about if your offerings are simple. Just as long as you're sincere with what you've offered, I think that's pretty good. Now, coming back to the question, tok wees, I think you can easily find them in a Chinese paraphernalia shop. And for these anak-anak, we call it, these figurines, you can find them easily in Penang and Malacca. There are, we call it artisans there. Now, you do not need to use anak-anak, Remember, these are additional form of beauty. The original form is just a pure red, it's just the red candle only, without replete of all these trappings and everything. So, but you can still find all these things in Penang and in Malacca.
Right. So thank you. We are back to Kueh Keng Tok. Okay, both white and red. Were they made of dough? And are there any fillings in it?
No, they are plain flour dough only. When the whole dough is rising, you quickly roll and then shape them, and you steam quickly, And then when you take it out, those needed to be painted red must be done on the spot, And then those that needed to be stained dot, red dot, you got to be fast. Do it while it's still steaming hot. No filling, just plain dough.
Okay. Then we are back to the kueh ee, the red and white kueh ee. You did mention that they are not equal size. Why is it so?
They are of equal size. Only for tangchek that you use non-equal size. The red will be smaller than the whites.
Okay, so it's only
which symbolizes the growth. Growth in the most difficult time, like a flower trying to bloom in the snow. So that's why you have little red ones. But for Semayan Tikong, for weddings, they are all of equal size.
Okay, and then the last question is there is a participant who noticed under Edmund Teo's family, there are two sets of incense urn, one on the upper table and one on the lower table. Why is this so?
In fact, when you raise a Tok Santai, there's there's normally two sets. Yeah, one on the lower table, one on the higher table. Basically, the incense on the Tok Samkai will be is a set. Yeah, it comes as a set. So, like my case, in my case, in my house, I use the lower one only, and the top one I use it as an incense. What you call it, as an urn, where I use incense. What you call it, ingots, or those circular ones, as a what you call it, a contraption or a holder for incense. Yeah, the bottom one is only used for the joss sticks. Yeah. Yeah, but in many places, in the homes that I visited when I was young, there were two sets, and then both ends were used as a receptacle for joss sticks, actually.
Oops, we seem to be okay.
Can you hear me?
You missed your last sentence.
Can you repeat the last sentence?
Okay, yeah. So basically, during my visit to the my eldest home many years back, they do use two sets of urns, the top and the bottom, and they were basically receptacles for joss sticks. So yes, you can have two urns for joss sticks for the top table as well as the lower table.
Sorry, Cedric, I'm going back to the question of the Kueh Keng Tok. Same person asking the question, because you mentioned to paint them red and not to mix color into the dough. That means literally painting them. Paint the color over the dough.
Yes, basically your dough is going to be white in color. Yeah. So the moment you steam the cakes, when the moment you take it out from the steamer, you would quickly dot it red if you want it to be white base, and if you want it to be red, then you quickly got to take a brush with red stain and red dye and quickly paint over the red over the cake. Yes, so basically the dough is white with red color from the start.
Okay. Thank you. Last question, really, ladies and gentlemen, Babas and Nonias, we have to take the last one. The last one comes with the question of your skills of paper crafting. Are you training or are you imparting your skills to the next generation and anybody learning under you?
Now, I was lucky in a sense because when I first ventured into all this decorative stuff, some of the youngsters took note, and on their own accord, they actually pick up the skills. And as you can see, at least 3 of the Tok Samkais that I've showcased earlier were all handled by youngsters. Okay, so they use their own innovative skills to decorate their own candlesticks or to decorate the offerings. Yeah, so for me is that if you are truly sincere in wanting to learn certain skills, yeah, I would be very, very glad to impart this knowledge. In fact, whenever they ask questions, I would tell them, okay, this is how the way do it. But as I say, you need not compete. Yeah. This is not a competition for who has the most beautiful Tok Samkai. It all comes from the heart. Yeah, if you like it to be more beautiful, you have your own way of doing certain things, so be it. Let it be. Yeah, but always understand the underlying symbolism. Very important. You cannot offer something without knowing why you are offering certain things. Then it becomes meaningless. So. Likewise, the practice of prayer is very, very important because you got to learn to relate to this sort of practice. Because if you cannot relate to this practice, then why in the first place do you want to pray? Then there is no link between you and whoever you want to pray to, but rather it's like either you're being forced to or you're being you're doing it out of other due to other motives. Yeah. So I always say, check your objectives. Why do you first want to do that? If you think that you would like to honor this person with a beautiful setup, I'll be very, very happy to do so. Share, to impart.
Right. So with that, thank you, Cedric, for spending a wonderful afternoon with us. I guess it was very, very informative. We have some other questions. I'll try and compile them and then send it over to you. Yeah, and maybe I can reply to them individually. So for the rest of us, yes, our upcoming event on the 1st of May, we have another wonderful speaker, Peter Lee, and I am Baba. So do join us then on the 1st of May.